Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? We're back. Okay, we are still getting right. So let me just share my screen here. Hi. Oh man, I have to be better about this chat windows. I rarely. Yeah. So if you have any questions, I mean, like if you don't have a microphone, I'm gonna try to be better about replying to them. It's just like it's a lot of stuff, like for an old person like myself, to deal with, like looking at all the screens, speaking my mind while I'm sculpting, and then at the same time, like looking at the. But yeah. So you're getting some lag. What do you mean? Like the audio is laggy? Is that okay for everyone else? Let's see.
Yes, it is okay.
Okay. Let's see. Let me just get this one back. Every time I swear, like I turn off my monitors, things are a little reorganized for me for some reason. So yeah, we're gonna get back to where we stopped yesterday. Actually, not where we stopped. I mean, like you can see that I did more work, right? I posted the video with a little time lapse, which takes forever to process, by the way, because it's trying to recreate the whole thing in HD, and it just takes forever just to generate the preview thing, the time lapse thing. And it seems like I forgot one area here that I didn't have the symmetry on, but I can deal with that later. I saw that some of you guys start doing the pores already, which is great. It's just a matter of like really getting the, not only the shape, right? The shape seems like some of you guys are getting the shape very nicely. It's mostly the scale, right? That's the hard part to do. I collected a couple of references today for myself because we were talking about the dark skin yesterday. And oh, by the way, look at this one. It's not related, but you have to check this lady out. How cool is that? Look at those black hats, man. Right there. It's very interesting, isn't it? And those patterns in here, they're so interesting. But let me get back to my references in here. So I was looking for images in high resolution. And obviously, if you look at the online, right, if you just type like anything and just put like images in high resolution, you're gonna get a lot of stuff. I didn't get super high res, but I was looking at some of those faces, and some of them are so cool, man. The guy that actually I fell in love with the skin is this guy here. He has the darker skin, the darkest of all of the other references. Not this one, but I mean the ones I collected today. All those guys, they're kind of like a little bit lighter color, but then his tone is so interesting, and the fact that it's like all those lines in his face. I think it's kind of like in the ballpark around the age of my guy. So I'm gonna be probably like inspiring myself like by some of those amazing wrinkles in here. It's not super high res, but nothing that I do, you can tell. I mean, like I use this reference, like very crappy reference from the internet. I never had have like super high res stuff, and I end up like making up a lot of stuff in the process. But it's always cool to capture whatever you can see, right? In that folder by Palomita that I point you guys to, that huge gallery she has. She has extreme close-ups of the eyes, for example. So today my plan is to actually sculpt other areas other than the pores themselves. I'm going to be, of course, like filling some gaps in there, but start like sculpting, for example, like around eyes, and then just like blending stuff and showing you how I'm doing it. If you'll notice in the video yesterday, if you saw the one I posted on my Instagram, I started by having like all those pores applied to the lips themselves, right? Because I was trying to get this area here, it's like since I'm using those kind of like arrays, right? I tried to capture them all the way to the edge in here. So what I did is that trick that I showed you guys yesterday. Before you started, I saved the morph target, right? So I can just like place anywhere I want. I can start the circle right at the edge right here and cover the lips with the pores. And then at the end, I just have to go with the morph selected in there, right? And just like morph it back. So if I show you here, for example, if I wanna, right, just if I do this, so I can start erasing everything in there, right? This one is not going to erase because I saved the morph target before, actually after I added that one, so it's not going to erase that one. But that's because that one was not invading this lip area, right? So I'm gonna start by going around here. Let me just check the situation with my eyes, because I never did like an actual cleanup of the geometry or anything. So there is some intersection happening there and all that stuff. But we can always you know, adjust as we go. See, like this base of the nose here is like it's completely square and weird. I have to actually make it more interesting in there. But like I said, I mean, like I'm gonna be sculpting a lot of stuff and adjusting at the same time. So yeah, I'm gonna deal with that stuff. So let's start with the wrinkle stuff, and I'll talk also before I go to the wrinkles. Let's talk about the other variation stuff that I didn't have the time to talk about yesterday. So first, I normally start with a basic pass that's just like the pores everywhere, right? And by everywhere, I mean like I'm gonna cover probably like this entire area here all the way. You see the areas I picked, right? Like the eyes are empty. I didn't add anything around the eyes. And around here, they're kind of like a little bit more faded, not so strong. For the nose, you're gonna add like some more customized one I'm gonna show you guys. And then even in those guys here, we're gonna start adding some variation like bumps and you know, it's like little bruises and things like that. But before I start adding any of those, like bumps and other things, I want to make sure that I have the porous part covered, right? So I might have to do a little bit here just so we have room to do more stuff. So I'm gonna just keep going for a little bit. So for the first hour, you're probably gonna just watch me yapping here and sculpting at the same time. So let's do this. And yeah, at the same time, let's see if I have, okay. So let's make symmetric. I'm just gonna fill some of those gaps so I can actually show you more variations around here. So let's just get those guys going for a little bit. See, like the rest of the face, that entire part that I did underneath in there took me about, I would say like an hour after class to do. So I would say like if you spend maybe like 2.5 to 3 hours, you can cover most of the entire face, not the rest of the head, but like the face and then the neck probably gonna take some more time. But I mean, like if you do carefully, you can get a lot of stuff covered. I'm just gonna cover some of those areas here. And trying to add a little bit of variation of the size. So like some are, I'm drawing a little bit smaller, some a little bit bigger, but trying to keep like a similar pattern in terms of distance, but without being too precise about like, you know, creating perfect triangles in between them with my those little lines, right, in between. So in this area here, notice that maybe it's a little bit, they're a little bit spread out. I can always go like in between, find a spot and add some of them just to fill those little gaps. As long as you do like right in the middle, you kind of like, you know, it's like at the end when you have like the other variations and you know, it's like a porous wrinkles and the micro displacement on top, the micro bump on top is going to help to even things out more. So it just has to look cool in a way that it has to break the specular in the correct way for the most part, you know. With the subsurface scattering, a lot of this stuff here is going to basically blend, right? And you're going to lose a lot of detail in the process because if you have your scale correct, the scale should scatter inside of each one of those pores. If you have enough subdivision levels, obviously. And then everything becomes a little bit softer, right? It's hard to capture everything. If you do a render like to look like marble, then yes, you're probably going to capture much more detail. Although the marble is going to have subsurface as well, but depends of how you're going to, let's say like some other type of stone, maybe not so much marble. Marble can be scattery. But let's see, let's get this area here. See, like I'm getting like some of the stretching because, you know, the alpha was trying to conform to this area that has like all those indentations and everything. So it's just going to reinforce and add some of those guys in here. Now, when it comes to the nose itself, the pores, let's take a look at a few references in here. Let's get some of those guys actually that I got today that I collected as reference. Let's look at them straight away. And let's see if we can find any like nose detail for this guy here, for example. Let's see how it looks like. It's hard when you have portraits like that, right? Like 85 millimeters, 100 millimeters lenses. That you know, it's like if they're trying to create like a nice focus on the eyes, right? Like they're probably gonna have to use some depth of field in there. So the eyes are a little, the ears are blurry. The neck probably gonna be blurry around the back, right? The trapezius in there, and the nose is gonna get out of focus as well. Same with the mouth. It's very common to see like those portraits with very good focus around the eyes, and then everything else a little bit more blurry to add like the kind of like a to really focus on the most important part of the portrait, right? Like the eyes themselves. But obviously, if you have like an f-stop a little higher, you can actually capture everything in focus if you want to. But it's very common to see those portraits without a lot of focus. So let's see. Yeah, see like all of them, the nose is blurry, at least those ones here, and the eyes are fairly well in focus. Let's see if I can find one of them. Okay, got one, this guy here. This is a cool one. Still a little out of focus, right? But you see like his pores in here, there is a little bit of a stretch happening. So they are not like perfectly round, right? Like there's some stretch happening there. They're kind of like going in a pattern, kind of like following. It's almost like an echo of those wrinkles in the eyes here, just like going that direction. But I can show you guys how I normally do this. I do by hand, like sculpting it. And in the case of the nose, you're gonna see those little craters in there, right? Some people are gonna have more of them. Let's take a look at the old people that I was looking before as well. Did I close it? I think I did. Let me just File Explorer. Just get another one. Let's see right here, so it's not a mess. Let's see. Backup. Workshops. Let's go back to the one I had yesterday. Workshop, and then archives, and then skin. Let's see that one. Let's see this guys here. Some of them might have some interesting pore detail in the nose. Yeah, this guy here is a little bit more you can see, right? It's almost like, remember when I was talking about like keeping them all connected in a certain network, so they have to almost touch each other, right? When you get to the nose, then they are a little bit more isolated. It's not like you have that network anymore. They're kind of like, you know, it's like you can see the blackheads in there, right? So it becomes more like an orange peel more than anything else. And you see like this area here for him, kind of like they kind of disappeared a little, became like larger forms. But here is pretty much like preserved, right? With the beard and here. So let's get something not so evident like that guy, but I'm just gonna put on the side here, and let's go back to the model. So to do that kind of stuff, instead of like using the same pore, the exact same pore I'm using here. By the way, this area here needs some work. I'm just gonna finish this one because I'm a little bit OCD. I'm just gonna, not by much, but a little bit. Sometimes it catches my eye and I have to do a little work. So we're gonna do, basically I'm gonna use the same brush, the same pore brush, this individual one that I'm using here, to create different effects, right? There are a few effects you can create with it. For example, if you have the same brush I'm using here, and if I use it super sharp, it might not work. But if I make a little bit more blurry, so for example, I can go to my alpha, right? And I can blur it a little bit. Let's do like a blur 3, maybe more. Let's see. Maybe it's too much. Let's try 4. And then instead of drawing like this, right, I'm gonna do the opposite. So if I do at full resolution, you're gonna look a little weird like that, right? But if I do with the half resolution, for example, I go back here. Even in HD mode, you can always go back in resolution, not all the way to the lowest level of your base mesh, but to the highest, up to the highest level of your before HD, right? So I'm gonna go back, Shift D to go back in resolution. So now I have 462,000 polys. And now if I sculpt with the reverse, I'm gonna get those bumps, right? So this kind of stuff, it's cool if you want to, you know, it's like add bumps like for chicken skin, stuff like that, like for a neck, right? You can add that kind of stuff with a reverse. It's the same brush basically. It's just like slightly blurred and the resolution of the mesh is lower. So if I go back here to the highest resolution now, you're gonna see like it just adds that little bumpiness right there with the subdivision, right? Same principle can be used for example, like for those pores in the nose. Instead of going to the super high resolution in there, I can start with, I'm gonna start symmetric around this area, but then as I walk more towards this area, I'm gonna start like breaking the symmetry completely, just to save us some time in there. So I'm gonna do like, again, like resolution is not the highest. My maximum would be like 20 something million polygons. I'm at 1.1. So I'm just gonna add some of those pores a little bit more spread out. So I'm gonna get like here. And then the size, again, like reference, right? You can add like some bigger ones. And then those ones you can actually use a tiny little bit of blur to just like blend them together. And all this stuff gonna have a little bit of macro displacement or macro bump together with it. So from this point on here, I'm gonna start like, almost like try to imagine like you're starting to detach them from this pattern, right? So they're gonna start getting a little bit more spread out, and then they're gonna become those larger areas. So I'm gonna just do a few of them right here. And get a little bit tighter when it gets to this area. You probably get lots of yeah, you know, blackheads around there. And then as you get a little bit more distant in here, I'm gonna just start spreading them a little bit. So I'm gonna keep a little bit closer around here, and then add more and more distance to create that kind of like, and then you see, I still see this little star shape in there, which is not ideal for what we want right now, but we're gonna do a little bit of a smoothing in there. So I'm gonna do that. Again, I'm gonna get a little tighter here. And then again, a little bit more spread out. Same around here. So when I come to this area here, now I can actually use a little bit of, it's a combination. I can use, for example, a little bit of blur, a little smoothing, right? And also a little bit of, like I can show you like the brush I use when I want to reinforce like the depth of certain pores. I can actually use one just for that. So let's do like a blur first. My blur is set to smooth stronger, right? The one I show you guys, the one that eliminates everything, right? Even at the highest level, we can use that one. It really, you know, it smooths everything. So I'm gonna switch back to my normal smooth, so like to Lightbox, and then I can just pick one like, let's see, smooth, let's try 35. This one, let's see what it does. If it's, yeah, it should be okay. So I'm gonna turn off, like I don't need that. So I'm gonna just put a low intensity, maybe like 15 or so. It's still a little big, so let's, oh, sorry. For the smooth, it's a different slide. So let's put that 20, 15, 20. So I'm gonna go very carefully, just smooth them out a little bit like that. And then starting here, I start like leaving the way it is and just like get a little bit smoother. So if I go now to the highest level, I should see some detail in there, but not a lot, right? It's gonna be like very kind of like smooth looking. And now I can start playing with things, for example, adding, obviously the number of pores I have in here is still a little too little. You know, I can add much more of that, like not much more, but I would say like I can almost double what I have in here in terms of, you know, but it's slowly getting a little bit less around here. Let me show you one of the brushes I created here, and you can reproduce on your side. Let's see, multiple voice, pimple. So there's this pimple here. So this pimple brush is an interesting one. So if I go to an area like this one, and I go to my highest resolution, and I can pick, for example, like one of those little pores that I just sculpted now, and I click right in the middle, and I drag, I can add little pimples like that. And obviously, you can do this in combination. If you have a color, for example, if you're painting a texture, you can leave this for later. You can actually paint the pimple and sculpt at the same time, right? So you can get like a little color in there, like a little blackhead. So to create those guys here, it's basically like it's a regular very simple brush, just like with the tweak profile. You're gonna smooth it out a little bit like that. And maybe like make it a little tighter later, but so basically what I have, it's the regular standard brush with the drag rectangle plugged to it. And then for the alpha, I have this. It's the alpha, I believe is 39 as well. And then the profile is gonna look like this. This is the key part here. So you imagine that that's like the fall off outside, and that's the little point that's picking out, right? So basically like it goes out, creates a little pimple, like the head of it, and then goes down, creates a little indentation in there, and then goes up again to create that little bump, right? So the mid value, I actually put that at 50. The radial fade is at 9. And let's see here, the focal shift is at 0. So I didn't tweak the focal shift. It's basically just the alpha with that profile right here. So basically like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of control. And then the settings are all here. And then if you apply just like around here, don't give much, you know, it's like it doesn't look that great. But once this is combined with all the macro stuff that we're gonna be using, for example, like if I switch back to my brush, the skin random, the one I was showing before yesterday, right? If I have something like this, they start looking more interesting in there, you know. Let me just do with lower intensity, so maybe like at 6, and I'm gonna apply in circular motions like I did yesterday, just to get a little bit more of this kind of like skin pattern to it, just to break the specular so it doesn't look like a piece of plastic when you render it, right? But then all this stuff here is going to be mixed with more wrinkles, not more pores, right? So, but just to have a little bit of a texture in there. Same I can do around here, you know, so it's not an empty kind of thing. I always like cover the entire thing instead of like live in areas of no detail whatsoever, right? Because the eyes can definitely be caught in there. And I'm adding a little bit of that around here as well, just to break up those pores a little further, right? But just very mildly, right? Like I barely put any pressure on my tablet. So I'm just like in circular motions, just like filling up those little gaps with a little bit of this detail, surface detail. So I can keep going with this, you know, it's like adding more and more of those little guys. And but that's basically like the principle of it, right? When I get to around this area here, break the symmetry, and I definitely start doing everything a little bit more randomly. So let's go back to my guy here, and let's go to subdivision level. Let's see, one less. So like the lowest, or like one more than the lowest here. And then now I can add like very customized spots. And I'm gonna have to avoid, obviously, going too crazy about this scar area, right? Because the scar area is gonna have to be preserved. I think a little bit more resolution here might help me. Let's see if it's too little. Yeah, I can smooth it out. So let's do a little bit more resolution like that. And I can pick like some areas with like larger ones like that, and then just smooth it out. But I need to see those little craters a little bit bigger in certain areas. And then in terms of, like I said, like in terms of volume, you're gonna be adding quite a bit of them. And then you're gonna mix those ones with blackheads, like that little brush I just showed you guys. So from time to time, you're gonna pick some of them, introduce some blackheads, or if it's a person who has a ton of blackheads, obviously you go to town with it. But in this case here, I'm gonna try to avoid too much of that. So I'm gonna smooth it out just slightly, get a little bit of that orange peel feeling in there. And now let's look at another brush here, which is the elastic brush I had never used before for the longest time until a friend from ILM, like he left actually, Frank Ravat. He said like, oh, do you use the elastic brush? I was like, no, never used it. Why is that? You know, is that a thing? And it's like, yeah, it's very cool because it preserves the detail, right? But the thing is like, if I just use a pure elastic brush, so if I just show you how it works, for example, you probably like, if you test it in your model, you're gonna go, oh, this shit, I'm not gonna use this. It looks like this, right? If you use just the default settings. So it creates this large ball. Actually, I'm painting color here. Let me just start it off. So you just create this large ball, you know, and just like, it's weird. It's almost like, why would I use this, you know? But the cool thing about it is that if you play with intensity first, and you can play with intensity and also use alpha combined with it. So for example, if I use an intensity that's much lower than this, let's say with 10, for example, now I can start like having a little bit more control. Let's say that 10 is probably too little. Let's put 30. This brush here, for example, the way it works, if you do like zigzag motion like this, right? It ends up like not looking as good as if you did like just in one single direction over and over again, repeating the same place. For example, like if I wanted to increase the volume around this area here without destroying what I have in there, obviously you have the option to go to the lowest subdivision level and just like work on it and things can adapt. But in certain circumstances, when you have stuff like around the eye bags, for example, you're trying to, you know, pump the surface a little bit more, but you want to preserve everything. You just use something like this. For example, if I want to increase this, I'm going to do one pass towards that direction, another one, and another one, and another one. Always going the same direction. And then you get like this very nice transition. You know, it's like, try not to go too crazy with the intensity. I'm using 30 in there. But you see like that volume was added without like destroying the detail that was in there before, right? So with that in mind, knowing that this is going to preserve my detail, unlike the standard brush that's based, like if you keep drawing more and more stuff in the same spot, it slowly is going to destroy the forms that you have in there, right? But for example, with elastic, if I plug an alpha here, it can be anything. Like my favorite 39, right? And instead of like use the stroke, I can switch to, let's say, drag rectangle. And now if I do something like this, let's see what happens. It pulls things, right? And then if I do the opposite, it goes down like that, preserving the detail as much as possible. Obviously, it's stretching a little bit because it's very forced in there. But it's a cool thing because you can actually do a lot with it. So I created this brush here. Let's see if I'm gonna find it, because it's been so hard for me to find stuff these days with my eyes. And also I have to organize my stuff. Probably put in Lightbox would be easier, or get that plugin. There's a plugin from a friend. So, but there's this one here that I call Pimple Elastic, right? So this guy here, what it is basically what I just did. So it's a drag rectangle. The alpha I'm using here, it's so hard to tell which one is the one I'm using, but it's probably like one of those 35 to 37, one of those. And then alpha, I have the profile like this. So basically it creates a kind of like a soft bump, right, at the end. So if I do something like this around here, you see like it's a very soft transition around it. There's a very soft fall off, right? And so to do that kind of, it's like to create like pimples and things like that, you can use like this one for areas like around the eye bags. For example, around this area here, if you look at the reference, this area normally has pimples in it. So you can get like some stuff like maybe like a little bit less intensity than that. But the cool thing about having it with a base on elastic instead of standard is that no matter what detail you already have in place, this is basically gonna, it's like just gonna preserve everything. And you can do this details even after you already sculpted a lot of stuff, right? So you can start adding those guys, and then eventually you're gonna get some random ones. I use this one also for the, the ingrown hair around this area. So from time to time you can add a few of them, in the lid itself, like the edge of the lid. And so this is useful for that kind of stuff. And there's another one that's the pimple. Let's see, there's a brush, let's see, single pore. And there's another one that's pore depth, I believe. So this is pore random, nose, livers, custom, skin bump, elastic. Let's see, is that another one? Oh no, this one is actually it's actually a spray. So basically the same principle. Use the elastic and use a spray instead of using the drag rectangle. And you can use a tiny little alpha. You can pick one of those here, like for example 40, 46, 45, and then you can even tweak a little further like that, right? So if you have with the spray, my settings here in the case, they are like this. So the flow is very low, 0.05. placement 0.5. And then if I do it, it creates this little interesting bumps like that, right? Which later I can actually smooth out to create like effect like that, right? Or you can do like the reverse of it as well. So for example, if I do like the reverse, I'm gonna create all those little things like that, right? You have to be careful with it because sometimes if you're trying to create like pores, and if you do this way, kind of like out of laziness, this at the end is not going to look like pores, right? Use this for actual bumps and other things. And then let's see, there's a couple of more here I want to show. So there's this one here under neck pimple, right? So this one here I use sometimes for the neck. And they're all like, they're not, oh, they're so strong. Let's do like less intensity here. Yeah, so this one here, they're very, very together. So they're just like, they create just this bumpiness like that. And it has to be a combination with intensity, right? I have to use intensity very low in here. So this one is actually not based on elastic. This is based on standard. And I have my settings looking like this. The flow is 0.25. Color doesn't matter because it's just sculpture. And then the placement at 0.5. I think is all default. And then I'm just tweaking the mid value in here. And I'm just using the regular ramp, which I could tweak potentially to have something a little bit more elegant like that, right? Little curvature, like easy in and out. But it's cool because you can actually, you know, it's like create some kind of like randomness, just like for the larger bumps, right? So I can do like over and over here. I have to use like micro wrinkles as well to this entire area. But just like to help with those areas is very cool, you know. I'm just gonna do just the neck around there. And then obviously you can actually increase the intensity and get a little bit more variation. For example, normally what I do for everything is like increase intensity and reduce the size of the brush. And then, you know, it's like increase the size of the brush and then reduce intensity, stuff like that, you know, just to add like more variation. See, right now they are there's a lot of them concentrated in the same spot, but you can always tweak this flow here. You can actually go from 0.25 to all the way to 0. And then you get stuff much more spread out like that. Like things are much more spread out now. So you can go like that and you get like those random bumps now. It can be very cool. And then obviously this is gonna have to be covered with some texturing that's gonna come from micro wrinkles later. So the other one would be, so I have this pimple elastic, single pore, skin bump. Let's see, there's one here, stubble, skin liver, skin color, clay buildup, skin stretch, skull. There's one, I'm not finding it here, which is basically, it's just one that creates, it's based on elastic. And man, pimple elastic, I thought that was the one I was using. Let's try with this one. No, but without the spray. No, this is the poly paint, sorry. Pimple elastic, where is it? Pimple elastic, this one. So this is the one I showed you guys before, the one we use for this little dots in there around the eye area, right? But you can use that with tweaked kind of like an alpha. So I'm just gonna add like a little bit more of a curvature in here. I'm gonna clone it before I destroy it actually. Brush, clone. And I'm gonna just go to this line and I'm gonna tweak it. Actually, I can just like reset it and just pull it straight away. So that should create like a little bit more of a depth like that, right? So this can be very cool because since it's based on elastic, so I have the elastic, drag rectangle plugged, an alpha tweaked to have a little point like that, right? So now when I do it, I can use it to make some of them a little bit deeper. I don't need to go like full intensity at, you know, it's like a 42 in here. It can be a little bit lower than that. So for example, 32, I can switch to Z sub, so I don't need to press Alt to reverse all the time. And then I'm gonna turn off my symmetries already off. And I'm gonna pick some of them, for example, like some of those pores, and then you're just gonna draw right on top of it, maybe intensity that needs to be a little higher. And I go higher in resolution as well, just slightly. 7 million. 20. Oh, okay, I'm maxed out. So if you pick this one, I don't know if you can see there, but I'm gonna pick like this area here and just draw on top of it. So basically what it's doing is it's starting to add some variation in the skin just by having some of those pores a little bit more, a little bit deeper than the other ones, right? I'm gonna get some of them like that. I'm gonna pick like random ones. And then that starts to break up like very slightly, you know, it's like that's kind of like one of the other little passes. So you go from a plain skin that's just like completely, it's almost like mechanical looking, right? Some that starts to have a little bit more variation in there. But then obviously there are passes with the micro bump, all that stuff already explained 1,000 times. But we're gonna be increasing the complexity of the skin as we go. So those are basically like the ones I use the most that for this kind of detail work. And most of the detail is basically manually done, right? So the standard brush, the one I use with the little alpha in there, I use for most of the stuff, you know. For example, like if I start like sculpting around the nose in here, I'm gonna start playing that game that I mentioned yesterday, connecting the dots, right? So I'm gonna just like start with the higher intensity, let's see, 10. And I'm gonna start carving, connecting some of those guys and introducing a little bit more detail. When you sculpt the wrinkles, everything you sculpt actually, try to avoid like creating patterns, right? So if you're sculpting stuff like this and you start doing all the same direction like that, right? You're gonna create like a pattern. Your eye is gonna be locking and gonna observe this this pattern. It's not gonna look natural, right? So if you're sculpting wrinkles, if you go back, like let's say a good place for wrinkles, obviously the eyes. So I'm gonna go to the eyes here. Let's look at how we would approach that. So I'm gonna increase the intensity some more, 15. And then let's look at around here. Let's pull up my reference again, because I wanna see how his face looks like for those specific wrinkles. And let's get pretty close like that. Switch back here. Let's just see if we can move it to the side. And let's bring this one down. So if I have my eye right there, let's introduce some of those wrinkles, right? So my intensity again is at 15. I have my little alpha in there. So I'm gonna start digging some of them. I'm gonna look for the hero ones in there first. So I see like there's that one right there, right? So I can try to cut across. Obviously not the same eye, but I can start with some of them. So I'm gonna create like a little bit of, this happens sometimes too. Like if you are not sculpting anything with the brush and then you touch one area, sometimes it creates the little dot at the beginning. So sometimes to refresh it, I just like press like and click any other area, just like make a tiny little cut in there, something with a very low intensity. So it kind of resets that. It's very weird. It's kind of like ZBrush gets locked in that mode sometimes. And now it should be good for carving. So I'm going to start with those lines, which can be very continuous, right? Unlike the rest of the stuff we are connecting dots, we don't have dots to connect in here, right? It's basically like everything is a different type of skin in there. And then, so I'm going to pick some of them. Like there is this very interesting one in here, which is fairly symmetrical, parallel to the other ones, right? But then we can add more interest by getting some of those. Actually, let's do a little bit less pressure at the beginning, a little bit more pressure in the middle, and then less pressure again, just to add a little bit more variation there. And then in betweens, so first I'm gonna mark those guys. I can choose to actually create more form in between, right? I can use the elastic brush to fill up this area, or I can just go to a lower res, which probably is what I'm gonna do now. And then I can switch my brush to clay buildup with a little alpha applied. I normally use like, again, like not the 39 in this case, maybe like 36, 37, one of those. I wish the ZBrush was telling me that. And then for intensity, I'm gonna use just like 2, right? And then I can just like go in here, just build up this area right in between those little wrinkles. Same for this one. So it's almost like you're sculpting like the secondary form in there instead of like the tertiary stuff. So, you know, we can add more or less or whatever you want to do when it comes like to the reference you have at hand. So I'm going to go back to my higher res, and I'm going to start incorporating some of the finer stuff. Let's go back to my standard. And let's say you get right here, let's incorporate some of the smaller stuff. Like there is a pattern that happens around here, which is, in this case here is not very visible, but as you get older, basically like you get like those wrinkles to go the way he has in there, right? Like they go more towards the nose like that. And then when you get around here, you start like with them coming like the direction he has in here. And then when he gets in here, you start like sometimes getting towards that, right? So you're gonna see that kind of pattern. You see a little bit of them in here, but not a lot. So we're gonna just try to incorporate some of them and keep things a little bit more subtle in his case. So let's get like those wrinkles around here first. Let's just dig them pretty good. Actually, with a little bit more intensity, I want to get those ones very kind of sharp and kind of close together too. It's a lot of little pressure in there. And then from time to time, I'm going to just cross over them. Actually, I sculpted in the reverse. I forgot to turn my Z sub here just a second. So let's just do that. So I'm going to do some of them a little bit parallel, and then some of them you're going to cross over it just to create this impression that there is a little more flexible skin in there. And then around here, you're going to start creating some of that patterning. So I'm going to bring some of them that direction. And those ones are going to start like using some clay build-up to actually create this little patterns. So this one too strong. The curvature a little bit more like that. So here I can actually either like cross over slightly just to break this super precise pattern in there. And also I can go to my clay build-up, which now with this little alpha here, instead of having the regular square, this one is going to allow me to create something a little bit more organic. Instead of like sculpting at the highest level, I'm going to go maybe 1 or 2 subdivision levels lower, maybe 1 subdivision level lower, and then I can actually build up with a very low intensity, maybe like 2 or 3. Build up those guys, smooth it out a little bit. Same here. And there's a lot of tiny ones. I can just add a few lines in here and then follow them. This guy, some lines in here too. This little border is important to get like a nice little pattern. And then there's a lot of micro wrinkles you're gonna have to add in here. I like this area here in his eye a lot. So one thing I noticed is that I might have to do like this edge is a little bit too sharp. I normally make it very sharp when I'm sculpting. It's kind of like a sculptural approach. There's still a shadow and everything in place. But then now looking at the reference, it would be cool to have a little bit more of a little bit less sharp, right? A little bit rounder. But so I'm gonna make sure that I have my symmetry on first. And I'm gonna just either use the clay build-up for that, kind of like incorporate a little bit of that roundness in here, or go straight to the inflate brush. So if I go to inflate, and the inflate is a kind of brush you have to be very careful with because it can really destroy the forms if you do too much of it. So I normally use the intensity of 3 instead of like 10, that's the default. And the reason is this, I'm gonna show you. I'm just gonna inflate this area here first. I want a little bit more puffy than it was before. So the reason why I use like the intensity at 3 is that, for example, like if you look from the inside of your model, Let's just use the solo here so I can see the inside of it. And then let's just go to subdivision, like the maximum subdivision level. And then let's say you're not very careful with the inflate, right? And you start inflating things and you thought like, oh, that would look cool if I just like bring this area, pinch this area together using inflate. So you start doing this with intensity, let's say like 10, the default, right? And you do that, it was like, oh man, look like cells now, like looks super cool, right? And I was like, oh yeah, that's gonna work. And then you go behind it, and that's the destruction right there, right? All this stuff here is gonna cause the displacement map to have all kinds of artifacts, right? So you have to be very careful when you use the inflate for that reason, you know. Use carefully with like intensity of maybe like 1 to 3, not like, definitely not 10. Even if you use your pressure sensitivity for your tablet, sometimes you can get in big trouble with that. Obviously, you can always go from the inside of the model and just like smooth things out, right? But that means you're going to be destroying the detail that we had before in there, right in the front. So yeah, that's the reason the inflate is very useful for organic stuff, but it has to be used very carefully. So that's the point I want to make. Let me just undo this stuff. Thing about HD is that like each undo, right, it has to read from memory all that stuff. So it takes a little bit. Almost there, let's see. Okay, that's recovered. Okay, that's good. All right, so be careful with that. That's the point. So for the, now we are talking about like, okay, I already marked the bigger lines that I want, like the like little hero lines in there. And then now I want to start sculpting the finer stuff. Always using the same brush, right, with the sharp point. Now I'm going to start like, okay, let's add more interesting stuff here. Let's go to the eyelid itself. And let's start sculpting lines using the same principle. So I'm going to start like with the very long lines. Let's get like a little smaller brush right here and a little bit more intensity. So I'm going to start with smaller lines. Try not to get too straight, right? From time to time, you just like break it up. Flare out a little bit. And then I can start like cutting in slight different directions over it. Do smooth in there. The inflate can actually help a little bit with that as well. And then from time to time, when you sculpt like too many of those tiny little ones, you have to always remember to find like some hero ones. So we're gonna pick like, okay, I have those guys going, kind of like creating this little pattern in there. Probably around the edge here, it'd be cool to have like a little bit of kind of like crisscrossing. I'm gonna get some of that in here, like that. And then I'm gonna find one that I can actually carve a little bit deeper. That's the one that basically like when I'm rendering, the light's gonna be catching, and it's gonna probably catch like those larger ones first, right? And everything else has to look natural around them, but you're definitely gonna have to have a hierarchy on the forms in there, right? So as I go closer and closer to the folding here, you have to imagine like, especially like with an older person, that this is basically like those marks are being created in the course of a lifetime, right? It's a lot of blinking, a lot of facial expressions, and all those things combined with like a, you know, it's like the skin losing elasticity, sun on top of the skin, like for many, many years and all this stuff. All this stuff is actually creating all those memory marks, right? It's almost like all that stuff is marked in there now. They're kind of like a, you know, it's like if you do pull and stretch something too much, right? You're gonna end up like having some kind of like permanent marks. So that's basically what's happening to the skin. And yeah, a lot of them, like those wrinkles, they are definitely from like you can tell that they were facial expressions, right? Like marks that are just like perma marks in there. So I'm gonna do like some of this crossing here. In his case, he has more like straighter lines. I'm gonna still add some of them crossing a little bit. And then at some point here, once I'm happy with, like, let's say like you added enough of those hero lines and enough of those smaller ones, you can start actually playing with that random skin that we just use it for basically like everything. So I'm gonna catch that brush again. It's gonna be the man, I always get lost in here. I'm starting to basically like put a lot of stuff in there. So the skin random, and then I can use either directional. So I can use the directional just to increase the amount of detail. Let's get the intensity a little bit higher. It's too much. And it has to be Z sub as well. So let's see. Yeah, so something like that. And I can actually use as well with a little bit of random strokes, right? Just to incorporate a little bit of this breakup so it doesn't look like something super smooth. Same for this area here. So I'm gonna do like a little bit more directional first, like that. And then slowly we're gonna build up the in-betweens here. So it's gonna go like from this larger forms to smaller, all the way to this very tiny ones I'm just adding here. And then around here, I can start like going in circles again. Doing like very, very low intensity for my, my pressure here is very, very low. Just like little circles, just to create a little bit of an area of blend. But then this area of blend, we're gonna add like tiny little wrinkles to actually help to blend everything together as well. I'm just gonna incorporate this. I'm gonna keep going like that same direction. And then eventually I'm gonna be crossing over in the opposite direction as well. So I'm gonna do that pattern that I mentioned before, like I'm gonna start sculpting some wrinkles coming this direction. So let's see, it's too strong now. Let's try with this small line. And here I can start doing those lines instead of like too straight, kind of like going a little bit more wavy with them. And starting from the top. And then starting to actually break them into like smaller lines. So this guy here, I can actually continue a little bit more. Here, for example, I can dig it. You create like a secondary fold right in between. Same here. Create another one right there. Actually blend to it. And then basically do this a million times. It's the kind of stuff, it's like when I work on those things, like I normally have music playing and I just don't feel the time passing, It's just like, you just get in the zone and just don't even pay attention. It's just like, it's a job. So basically like you just like enjoy the music, pick something that you really like, and then keep listening to it. And then when you wake up from that little dream in there, it's like, oh, I got a lot of stuff done, I mentioned this before. Sometimes I'm so in the zone with stuff that there's a song playing sometimes that I realize that it's the same song playing for like 2 straight hours. Not 2 straight hours. I think like I would be a little crazy over 2 hours. But I would say like a good like close to 1 hour. I already did. It's like with the same song playing loop. And the thing is like I cannot move. It's like I start getting in the zone and I was like, man, I cannot even move. I know that the song is already annoying right now by the time I noticed it, but I was like, I just cannot change it right now. It's like, it's almost like something is gonna break if I change it. And then after it's like so if I have to pee or something more grave, then I have to actually snap out of it and then fix it. But yeah, it's like, it's such a mess. So you see, like I'm starting to add more and more of the secondary stuff. So basically like those hero ones here are the ones that I want to make sure that, when I render, the light's going to catch them pretty good, right? So I have to have those deeper ones. Some of them are going to be longer as well. So some of them are going to keep going here. And you don't need to go the same line all the time, right? All the way. you can break them up in the process. So from here, I can actually break it and then get a little bit closer to it in parallel a little bit, and then come with that. Same from here, you can start with one, break it, start another one, break it, start another one. But the important thing is to actually try to follow that, the directionality, you know. And then around here, you see like I have this fold. So in this fold, I can actually incorporate some smaller ones like that. And then making sure, again, like change direction, right? If it's getting too parallel to each other, just change direction. Add some of them smaller, then pick one that you think like, okay, this one can be the hero here. It looks very visible. So I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper, right? And I'm gonna make it continue a little bit longer. So that way you start getting a little bit of some form, right? Let's look at the reference again, because most of the time I start looking at references and I just, you know, start ignoring them after some time. It's just like, oh, you know, that's a good chance for me to create something here. So I'm not very anal about, you know, it's like sticking with the reference. Like it's very rare, actually, you know, of course, like at work, if I'm trying to sculpt something to like for a digital double, like an actor, like for a hero shot and stuff, you have no room for being creative, right? You can just sit your butt and try to reproduce what you're seeing, and that's it. But then your personal work, you know, it's like there's no better chance I could think of you being creative within this kind of like very limited, for some people, right? Like if you talk about like a portrait, right? I'm doing a digital portrait. People are gonna be like, oh, okay, what's the creativity in there, right? And you're gonna say like, oh, I take it as a challenge, right? But if you are making things up, for example, if you're idealizing facial features, for example, like look at the amount of room I have here to create whatever I want. You know, it's like there's a lot of room in here within this constraint of working with likeness and all that stuff. You still have plenty of room to be creative within this type of forms. You know, it's like I can incorporate any type of form in here as long as it talks to the rest of the character. You know, if it's something that is not going to destroy the integrity of the character, I mean, I would say like it's a very fun process to actually try to imagine those things, you know. And obviously, the best way for me to imagine is like every time I'm sculpting something organic like that, I try to imagine like how would it feel if this was actually skin and I'm touching it, you know. So I'm kind of like trying to think about like my memory when it comes like to touch and things like that, touching my own skin, you know, it's like other people's skin or whatever, and like how does it feel, right? And try to incorporate that in the sculpt. For example, like I want to make sure that things feel soft, right? When I'm sculpting, for example, those folds here, I want to make sure that they feel like there's a little bit of inflation on the side. You know, it's like if something is breaking up, for example, here, I want to make sure that that cut around there is going to feel like something that could be, you know, an actual person. You know, it's like a little fold in there like that. So yeah, it's like, to me, is a very relaxing process. You know, it's like it might be a little stressing for some people, but I don't know, man. This for me is the fun part. You know, just like go to town with the details, and obviously make sure that at least like your primary forms have an okay shape, because like just decorating a turd is not gonna go anywhere, right? But most of you guys are very experienced. You know, it's like I see your work and you're pretty awesome already. So this is going to be really just like the cherry in the top, right? Your beautiful models, we're going to be adding this sweet detail in there, and then things going to start looking really cool. Let's try to get some of this crisscrossing here. I see in his reference in there, so you get some of that. We're going to try to add a little bit of a wobble here, like that, and then cross again. Everything is so subtle, right? It's the kind of stuff like you look at the face and you think you know what's going on with the face, right? You see a nose, it's like you think you know what the shape of the nose is until you start sculpting. And then you start looking at all the subtlety that's in there. And I think that's the biggest challenge, you know, it's like it's refining our eyes when we do this type of portraits. You know, using scans is the easy way, right? Like just use the scan and call it done. But to me, there is no fun using scan. I don't think I ever used one in my personal work. It's just like for professional work, because I want to learn. You know, I want to learn more about the form. I want to, you know, make sure that I create something that looks convincing enough. It doesn't need to be realistic, because it's idealization. Actually, it doesn't need to be look real. It has to look realistic. That's what I'm trying to say. And basically, like, you know, trying to give a disclaimer every time I post something, like, oh, you know what, this is all done by hand. Don't expect too much about it. But maybe it's because I'm limited. Maybe I cannot do something more real. But I like the stylization, like in the details, you know, stuff that I know I put in there, stuff I can remember, like, oh yeah, I remember when I sculpted that, and without just like cleaning up, you know, scans. That, to me, sounds very boring to clean up scans. So yeah, so we are at 1 hour. If you guys have any questions about the process so far. I'm trying to really create something that's imagine like a fractal, right? Or a tree with the branches and all that stuff. Basically, like it's always following a hierarchy. Start with bigger forms, and then smaller and smaller and smaller, until you have something that looks interesting.
Chris.
Yes.
So one question that I have is that on all the pore distribution you did yesterday, I can see already some directionality following the wrinkles. So you did that pass that you explained us on top already, right? Like kind of connecting the dots on that direction. That is where the wrinkle is going to form.
Not so much of the direction yet. So for example, the direction, what I was talking about is this. So for example, if I have my pores, they are all like kind of like a pretty round, right? So what I'm gonna do, I can sculpt some of them to add some directionality. So if I want to get those guys here to stretch a little bit, that's the thing, you know, it's like I do everything manually, but I enjoy the process. So I just go over some of those wrinkles, and I just like basically create the directionality by actually pinching them, like and sculpting a little wrinkle on top of each one of them. So basically like stretching them manually like that.
So basically your pores right now, that you are accentuated that, but that connection in between them, those lines, it's already on the array that you created?
Not really. I'm actually just like using the center of the pore as a reference, and then just crossing across them with a line, you know, to create this little impression that's stretching. But one thing that I did in production was when we got the scan for Mark Ruffalo for the first Avengers. You can see that in the video on YouTube, I believe. Basically, like I created some of those pores. I stretched them in Photoshop, and then I had like a bunch of different types of stretch. And then from time to time, I would just like pick some of them already stretched, and I would just like place them that way. So if you want to do this, for example, you can get like you can sculpt a bunch of pores that are already stretched. And then when you place them, you can already place the stretched ones, especially like for around the eyes and things like that. Sometimes it's cool to have like very stretched pores in there. So yeah, that's another option, you know. But in this case here, anytime I need like some of the stretch like that, that's kind of what I'm doing here. You know, it's like just pinching them and just like dragging a little lag on top of it. And then for the chin, oh, you see like this happens with ZBrush sometimes. You see like there's a mistake in there, that line across. This only happens when you're using lazy mouse. It creates this weird line that sometimes cross across the entire model. So I have to be careful here so I don't do that. But yeah, you see like another thing I noticed just now, see I added all that detail in that. From the close-up, it looked pretty good. But from a distance, it doesn't look like it has enough like secondary form in there. So what I can do, I can go back and maybe use this a little bit lower, maybe 8. And I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna resculpt some of the bigger ones like that. So with the lower intensity and a little bit bigger brush, just to create this slight fall off like that. So from a distance, you start seeing those wrinkles a little bit better as well. like kind of like second, like I said before, like it's almost like treating each one of those groups like an eyelid, for example, almost like a creature, right? So you have your primary forms, and then you're going to go to secondary, tertiary, and all that stuff. So it's important to be able to distinguish them from a distance, right? So if you're looking from the overall look like that, you have to make sure that you're seeing the lines, but you're also seeing like the, you know, it's like the secondary stuff, not only like the fine lines on top of the primary, right? So when I get like to those areas of connection between the pores and the wrinkles, I normally resort to that that little brush more and more, like the skin random one. And sometimes I use more directional. Too strong. More directional like that. And sometimes a little bit more like a random, like that. As long as I get a nice connection between them. And then on top of that, I go and I do more and more sculpting. So from those pores around here, I'm going to start actually creating the same kind of stretch that I just created in there. Just going to create some of them, almost like they're starting to pinch and become wrinkles, right? It's almost like a transformation in here. They're starting to get a little bit more pinched. Let's get a little bit more intensity. Well, not pinched, I'm saying stretched, right? They're going to get more and more stretched. So from those guys, I'm going to start like almost like growing those wrinkles from the pores themselves. And again, like trying to avoid like parallel lines, right? Kind of like try to create like a little bit more of an organic feeling. And then every time you do something localized like that, try to spread it, for example, by going over and creating other wrinkles that kind of go and connect to those. So never too localized. So when I get here, I can start going over those pores and then connecting the dots like I was doing before. So I get all those guys to connect like that. And then start like getting longer and longer lines. And again, like it all depends of how far you want to push your models, right? For a lot of stuff is overkill. I like posting close-up shots of eyes and stuff like that. So I kind of like sculpting this area, you know. It's like I like you know, it's like creating something that I can show from close-up. But for a portrait, if you're doing just like you know, from a certain distance, I've seen some hyper realistic you know, CG portraits done even recently that the models, I mean, like you cannot zoom in all the way to a macro because it's not going to hold up, but the models look extremely realistic from the distance they are meant to be used, you know. So I see the portraits like look very realistic, but I can tell that every time they try to, you know, post like a closer stuff, it doesn't hold up. But it's not their fault. I mean, like maybe that's not the intention. They're just like, and a lot of them are obviously using like texturing XYZ and other stuff, you know. But I like experimenting with the form. So the eyes are basically like, that's the approach, is to create like, first I mark some of the hero lines and then go to smaller and smaller. And then I can go back in subdivision levels and dig a little bit deeper to create like the major ones, right? So it's almost like if I'm doing something like a small wrinkle, let's say like, okay, I have a small wrinkle happening right here. I have a bigger one happening right here, right? And then I can actually create like even bigger and bigger by introducing more and more form as a support for it. So at this point here, things are a little bit boring, right? Because I don't have, you know, it's like the hierarchy is okay, but the forms themselves, they're a little bit plain. So at any time, you can just go subdivision level like 1 or 2 before. You can use the, let's try with elastic, since we talked about it before. Let's use elastic without the alpha. And I'm gonna use a smaller intensity, maybe, let's say 40 something. And let's try around here. Oh, actually, this is a drag rectangle, so dots. You know, let's just incorporate, it's still a little high, so 30. So we're gonna incorporate some form here. We're gonna build up some of those in-between folds in here until it looks a little bit more interesting. So right in between those wrinkles, I'm actually putting some form in between. You can see like it's starting to inflate, but not really inflate, right? It's just like building up, preserving the form. And then around here, I can even use like, I like to call them bridges, right? So if you have an area that's kind of like a valley right here, see there's a valley in there. You can create like little bridges, and you can use the elastic, but I actually like to use the clay buildup for it. So around here, I can actually go like, I'm gonna create a bridge that's gonna cross that little valley in there. I just like doing that, because that creates the impression that the skin is actually stretching over, right? Like from this side of the river to this side of the river. So you can create a little stretch. This is gonna happen quite a lot around this area here, right? Like you get stuff like that. So for example, like you're probably gonna get, you know, it's like some little bridges crossing over from areas like that, especially here, right? Like you get like from this area here, crossing over. And that adds this impression that the skin is, it's thin, right? For example, like if I sculpted this area here with a larger brush like that, that looks a very like thick skin, right? But if you want to give the impression that it's a thin skin, you use like a very small brush and make sure that you stretch it enough to create this tension. The same for clothing, right? Like if you guys sculpt clothing, it's the same deal if you do manually. If you use like a very, very large brush, you're gonna create the impression that it's a very thick kind of like cloth. And then the smaller you go with the wrinkles, right? The thinner, the more like, you know, it's like skinny and delicate the detail is. So now I'm just going over here with my clay buildup and then exaggerating some of those in between the wrinkles areas here, just adding some more form. So right in the cross section, right? Like you have like one line in there, those little ones going that way. I'm gonna sculpt the in between right there, just to create this more organic feel. And then same thing about the bridges. I can go any place I want. For example, around this area here, I can create those little bridges around there. Right in the middle of the valley, you just like paint it across to create that little bridge in there. So it's like sculpting like skin. It's like it's a bunch of different passes, right? Like you do passes like for the pores, and then you have to do this. You have to do the blending. You have to come up with the with the little bumps and bruises, all that stuff. It's just like it's time consuming. But in terms of techniques, that's basically what I use for the most part. You know, it's like it's really not like a rocket science. It's just like a lot of work. That's what it is. So when I get to this area here around the chin, for example, if I look at the references I had before, which are, let's get, oh, this guy here. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. Let's get one guy without the beard, an older dude, maybe this guy here. Yeah, let's try that. It's, yeah, maybe not the best because it has quite a bit of stubble in there, but well, I think it's gonna work. Let's try. Open new tab. So this is Marcus. Let's get to this. So when you start zooming in here, see like the direction in here is gonna start changing, right? If you see like with younger people, sometimes you get like lines going in different directions. Not sometimes, I think it's gonna happen with this guy too. It's just that you cannot see that much. But you see those pores there, the directionality, they go like this from the center and out, right? And then they're gonna start coming from the outside and in. So you're gonna create a cross section around right here. So we can try to do a little bit of that. And I'm gonna use my trusty little random brush, the one we use all the time. And I'm gonna start like, let's do it symmetrically here for now. And let's start doing some lines coming from the outside and in. See how subtle they are like that? Very subtle. Just running over the entire surface. It's the kind of stuff that it doesn't seem like it's doing much, you know? It's like, but as soon as you render, you can definitely see the micro stretching happening. And then you're gonna start doing that opposite direction, right? Like starting from the center in here. and then dragging it out like that to create this little tension. And every time you find a little valley like this, you can add a little bit of that, those little bridges, right? Obviously here we're getting to a very, very small type of detail already. So you might not want to do it, but it's up to you. So the same way I'm using this directionality here, I can start doing around the lips. So, so from here, I'm gonna go towards the middle. So basically, like if you're not seeing what I'm doing, because it's a little subtle, I'm gonna just exaggerate. So I'm gonna do this. Oh, maybe it's a little bit too exaggerated. Less. So something like this, and then like this, I'm gonna start like going around and then flaring that way afterwards. So it basically like goes around the lips like that. But obviously using it in a very, very subtle way, so it doesn't destroy anything, right? And then that's gonna be in preparation for all the small detail we're gonna start sculpting around the lips as well. If you remember, like when you're looking at the references, around the lips you have those tiny little lines, and they are fairly parallel to each other. But so I'm gonna reduce this to 8 again. I'm gonna start adding some of that direction around here. And then, like I said, bring it out, kind of like that. Very, very subtle. You can see like in the lips already getting some of them. Same around here. So I'm gonna start flaring from this. Actually, from here is gonna be the same direction you're working before. So from the center and out. So I'm gonna go down here. It's very, very subtle for now. And then everything I'm doing here today to show you guys, I mean, like I'm trying to speed things up. I'm probably gonna do all of that stuff more carefully when I'm by myself with my music, but I wanna make sure that you guys are getting all the information. Basically, like what I'm trying to say is like, do what I'm saying, what I'm doing here, just do more carefully and you're gonna get better results for sure. So let me just switch to standard now. And I'm gonna use like a very, very tiny brush. And I'm gonna start sculpting those lines in here just to show you how I approach them. Because today we are sculpting wrinkles and also transitions, right? So let's just switch back to a reference we can actually look at. Hopefully it's not too, yeah, this one is a little too blurry, but we definitely can find other ones. Actually, in my reference folder, I might actually have it. Let's do like that. Is this the last one? Why is it not doing it? Let's get this. Let's try with one of those guys. Well, maybe Palomita's reference would be better in this case. Actually, this guy here is going to have everything we need. Yeah, so like, not so much the top, I cannot see that much. Let's pick another guy here. Or her, not so much. Let's see. Face photography. Okay, let's get like a younger dude so we can actually see the detail. Open new tab. Let's zoom in here. Yeah, this guy has them very visible. See all those tiny little lines in there and how they come like from nothing, right? Just like blending from the pores, and then they become like the larger and larger folds. And the direction I was talking about, you know, coming from here, and then all the pores going that way, but also that direction, you're just gonna see like those guys going that way. That's the crisscross section that I mentioned. You know, go this way and that way. So we're gonna be copying a little bit of that, like using as a reference. So let me move this to the side here. I'm gonna just keep in there. I'm gonna be sculpting to show you guys. Same brush that I'm using to carve all the wrinkles, I'm gonna use for the small ones as well. So I'm gonna start like from those pores in here, and I'm gonna start digging. Am I symmetric? Yeah, okay, cool. I wanna save some time. Let's do more intense, maybe 15 and a tiny little brush. Even more intensity, let's see, 20 something. So here, yeah. So we're gonna start like digging those tiny little lines and using the same principle. If you're doing like two parallel, just like change the direction from time to time to add a little bit more of a diagonal. And then sometimes you can add like in-betweens, and then you can pick some areas, and then some of those guys, the same way we did with the wrinkles in the eyes, and you can say, okay, I need some heroes in here to show up. So we're just gonna, if you're picking some heroes, obviously I would try to turn off the symmetry, otherwise they might be pretty visible, especially with lips. Eyes as well. Eyes, I have to break up the symmetry. I did a lot of stuff symmetrically today. But you see like those lines, for example, instead of like going a straight line, sometimes just go halfway and start another one from underneath. Kind of creates like an overlap between them. And then from here, you can actually start connecting some dots. So you're gonna get like some of those pores and start like blending to them. And it's the kind of detail that, again, with the subsurface scattering all applied to it, you might notice that all this stuff is going to blend very nicely. You know, it's like, because sometimes you think like, okay, this, you know, it's like maybe it's going to show up too much. No, it's actually, it's going to blend very nicely. So all around the lips, around the whole perimeter of the lips, we're going to be doing this, adding those little lines and making sure that we are following that direction I mentioned before, right? So we're going to go, let's say like this direction, right? And then towards this direction here, and then towards that direction. And then from here, you're gonna come from this direction. It's like, it has to follow a certain structure, you know? I mentioned this before, but let me just undo those things. One day I'm gonna get in trouble, gonna be undoing, it's gonna crash, just like Maya does, right? You're undoing stuff in Maya and just crashes randomly. I hate it. But ZBrush is still pretty good at that. Fingers crossed. So let's see, the last one, there you go. So yeah, I'm gonna keep doing that, and then for the, when you get to this area here of the lips, then we're gonna start doing like a more and more complex work. So you're gonna keep the same direction I was doing the rest of the stuff down there when I was doing the micro detail, but I'm gonna start going, let me just like that so you can see it better from that angle. So always like trying to connect to the next pores in there, right? So kind of like, see, like I'm not doing everything in parallel, right? Sometimes there's a little diagonal, sometimes they start a little late, but just to create a little bit of more of like an organic feel. And then from here, obviously, you're gonna start stretching to bigger lines. I'm gonna just break the symmetry for a second. And then you're gonna get like, let's say a longer line like that, that might get thicker from time to time. And then some gonna come from there and probably like thick and then fade. And everything is gonna start like actually blending together. Like a, you know, it's like major forms breaking into smaller and smaller forms, and then blending with whatever surrounding skin type is. As long as you have in mind, like, okay, I need this type of skin right here in this area. To figure out the blending is pretty much the same process, you know. It's like you basically like, start like invading the space, you know. It's like you, okay, we have the group of pores in here, and then the wrinkle is going to come to play, and so basically invade the space a little bit. Sometimes it's interesting to actually blend them a little bit before you do the, by blending I mean like smooth the pores a little bit so they are a little bit shallower, so it's easier to blend. You can use the morph brush to help you with that as well, you know, so just like we did before. And then when it comes to this area here, then we're going to start having a lot of fun by, again, introducing those tiny little wrinkles. So again, same principle, I'm going to connect some of those pores from this one. I'm going to go to the next one. It doesn't need to be like a straight line, right? You can always go towards a diagonal and find some other ones in the diagonal like that. But trying to find points of connection that make things look a little bit more natural. And then from here, it's going to start flaring out. So you're going to go up like that. And then basically like this corner here, what you have to imagine is always like, if you understand the way that the muscles work, right? Like, so you have your muscles like, basically like it's a circle like that. That's the shape of the muscle fibers, right? The muscle fibers go in a circular mode right here around the mouth and also around the eyes, right? So when you have a circle like that, let's do it again. that means that the wrinkles formed are going to go in perpendicular to that, right? So you're going to get that type of shape. So that's a good indication of how you're going to have to sculpt not only the smaller wrinkles, but the major wrinkles as well, right? Like if you have someone who smokes a lot, right? Like there's this smoker kind of lips, right? Like you get older from doing this ooh shape, like you know, it's like from having the cigarette in your mouth and having this thing like sucking on it, like for years and years. Some people have like those very well developed, like it's like smoker lines in here. I don't know if there's a name for that, but that's how I'm calling it now. I never smoked, but I know people. So let's see. I'm a very square person, by the way, man. I never did any drugs other than alcohol, like drinks here and there. But I used to tell my ex-wife, like, I'm crazy enough without anything. I cannot imagine, like, it's like taking other substances, I'm gonna go a little insane. So I rather stay in my spot. I think like I'm creative enough and happy enough where I am to, to be using something else. But I don't blame other people who need to do it, just like not for me, for sure. You see, like it's the kind of process that I think it's cool for you guys to watch the way they approach it, but I don't blame you guys if it gets a little boring over time because it becomes more and more repetitive. But I want to show at least like some of those pointers so you guys are not stuck, so you can actually start doing some of that stuff eventually. You're probably gonna play catch up with me a little bit because I'm doing this stuff today and you guys still have to figure out sometimes the topology still or the projection or, but the good thing is that those videos are all recorded and you guys gonna have a couple of days actually to send something for review, right? So we start thinking about it. Just so you know, like the reviews happen this Saturday. So it's Los Angeles local time is going to be at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. I should send the invitation tomorrow, so it's going to be like a different meeting, right? Same way you got like the calendar for these meetings, you're going to get a different one for the review meetings, and it happens like in the morning, so 9, and then at night at 9, so I can actually reach every one of you. I know it's Saturday, it kind of sucks, for you guys. I mean, like especially the youngsters, right? You guys want to go out, you're going to have fun. But I mean, I'm a family man. I don't have a lot going on, so that's the best way and the best day to do that. Especially like with the full-time job here, it's impossible for me to find other time anyway. But I would love to have all of you guys. And so what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be giving you a link to a Google Drive. So I have a Google Drive, and then. In there, I'm gonna send the instructions in the email, obviously, but you're gonna create like a folder with your name, and then you're gonna upload anything you want. I mean, like I normally give preference to screenshots. It's easier for me to just like Photoshop, like paint over stuff and tell you my ideas. But sometimes people prefer sending the model itself. It's like, okay, here's my model. What can I do to improve it? And I don't mind like doing a pass. You probably like. You saw that you have access to the reviews from the past, like 3 classes or so. So you know how I work. It's like I just like open the files in here and I try to do my best to give like the best feedback I can give. But everything is very subjective, right? Sometimes it's just like my own opinion about stuff. So take with a grain of salt, obviously. And also because our eyes are very different from each other, right? I never met like 2 artists with the same impression about something. There is always like what I mean is like it's like how you perceive the form exactly, right? It's very different. One example I used in the past, like when I first got to ILM. The first model that they asked me to do was a transformer. So it wasn't creature, it was like a transformer for Transformers 2. And then I started modeling and everything. And there was one part that I was a little, it was like, okay, I saw the concept and I had in my head that the form was completely concave. And my supervisor said, no, that's convex. I was like, no, that's concave. You know, it's like, and the guy had a ton of experience, and I had a fair amount of experience, like observing things. But the thing is, like, sometimes it's very hard to tell how you see certain things, and some other people see in a completely different way, you know. So all of that to say that if I see something in your model that you think is completely dumb, just bear in mind that people just see things differently, and it's just my own idea about what I'm seeing, you know. But take with a grain of salt. I'm gonna try to be super nice with you guys.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
So if we do decide to end up sending a model for the review, just in case, do you prefer a Z tool or a Z project, just to make it easier for you?
Yeah, I would say like the thing to avoid is to send me like HD geometry models. I mean, like if you have HD geometry detail you want to show, for example, like pores, just for me to see like, okay, how are the pores, like the distance or the scale, right? Send this as screenshots. And then if it's like something about the forms themselves, like the primary and secondary forms, then send me a project, but without this, the pore detail. So basically, like if you have everything with pores already, you already worked on your tertiary. If you simply click the model, like the subtool, and you click duplicate, that's going to create a duplicate of the model without the pores or anything. So before you do anything, just like save your project, make sure you have it safe and a nice backup, and then duplicate the file if it has HD, and then delete the original one. And make sure you double check the number of points in there at the top to make sure you don't send me like a model with like 80 million polygons, because normally those files are very big. Let me just save this one to show you something, by the way. So if I save this file as is right now, you notice that I'm still in HD mode, right? Look what's gonna happen. So detail. So the last one I saved was 734 million, 1,000 polygons, right? Not 1,000 polygons. Okay, sorry, like 734 megabytes. So let's do like 3, and then let's save it. So let's see the size of this guy here. It's gonna take longer and longer to save those files. So let's see. All right, so if I try to open it, it grew a little bit, not by much, 745, right? But here's the thing that's interesting. I was in HD mode when I saved it. So I'm gonna get out of HD. So I'm gonna go A here, get out. So it's saving, storing the HD. So let's save this again. And that's gonna be version B. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a difference in size that's gonna happen. At least that's what ZBrush always did in the past. So if you're gonna save something, you know, make sure that you save in the lowest resolution, for example. But unless your HD geometry is just the beginning and you just the few pores, it should be small enough to file. But let's see if there's a difference here. So check this out. I saved the same file twice, right? From HD mode, it gave me 745 megabytes. And then outside of HD is like 381. So that's something that ZBrush does. I don't understand why, but it's another thing to keep in mind. If you want to save space in your hard drive, maybe get out of HD before you save it. So that's a good yeah. But yeah, man, like anything like that's too big, it ends up like clogging the whole thing. What happens with Google Drive, and it happened like twice for me in the past couple of months, is that some people sometimes wait for the last minute to send stuff, and then by that time, for example, like I start downloading stuff, I would say like 2 hours to 2.5 hours before the reviews start, and then basically what Google Drive does, it compresses everything into a single zip file before you download. And then what happens is that sometimes people start like uploading stuff in the middle of the process, and then Google Drive starts spinning. And then sometimes it takes a long ass time to download. to the point that I had to delay one of those reviews at some point because it was taking forever and there was already time to start the reviews. And I said, guys, you have to give me another hour to make sure that this stuff is gonna actually be downloaded. So I asked you guys to, if you can, just upload everything the night before and not in the morning or in the middle of the night, because that might be messy, you know. But I would say, like, I'm gonna give you the heads up. For example, I'm gonna send you an email with all the information, and also I'm gonna post in the group saying like, okay, the reviews, the deadline is gonna be, let's say, like 10 hours from now, so you guys are aware of what I expect. And but I mean, like, from now all the way to Friday, it's plenty of time. So, you know, it's like, and this is just we're in the second week now, so don't need to be too precious. You know, it's like, send anything that you like. You can fit within that space of time, and I'm gonna do my best to help you guys. I'm doing some tweaks here in the secondary forms right now, like, just like, I'm not even looking at reference for the most part, right? It's just like looking at stuff that looks weird to me. For example, like this area here, it's very much like weird, right? Like there's this bump in here, it's kind of unmotivated. So I'm just gonna compress it a little bit more. Make it a little bit less lumpy. Bring it a little bit closer to the surface. Yeah, looks a little better, a little bit more compressed. And yeah, so between today and tomorrow, I'm gonna be doing basically the same thing, which is like covering the skin. Talking about probably like tomorrow is gonna be like ears. There's gonna be some detail in the ears. But for now, I'm gonna be working in more and more detail. Let's do maybe some bumps, because I noticed that a lot of those guys' skins, my reference had like lots of bumps. So I can show you guys what I collected in here. Let's do this guy here. So like a lot of them, like this guy here, for example, like he has this kind of like a seal kind of, you remember the singer, right? Seal. You know, it's like this little scars, right? Like in the cheeks in here. Very interesting detail in the neck as well. Very interesting bumps in there. And in the forehead, it has interesting bumpiness as well, like lots of little pimples. And I noticed that with a lot of my references, it doesn't show much in here, but I can tell even from a low resolution, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a bunch of bumps everywhere that I can actually incorporate. Like some more spread out, like bigger pores in the forehead in here, some wrinkles. I'm actually gonna use him a little bit more as a reference because I see there is a facial expression in there that I wanna capture. So I can actually use this one to reinforce my own wrinkles in my model right now, since he's the main reference anyway. Let's open this guy here and do some more work on that. So if I get the eye bag, I can see I can add some more form in there. I can actually go to a lower res and get back to my trusty standard brush. And I can go like a lower intensity, again, like maybe like 5. So I can actually tweak my secondary forms in here and oops, add. So I can go a little even lower than that, 3. And then just dig a little deeper. The eye bag right here. Same around here. So you see, like, even with the tertiary forms already in place, I'm still working on my secondary, and I'm gonna keep doing this forever until the end of the project because it's digital art and we have a lot of flexibility with it. This fold here, for example, it's an interesting one because it's a combination of the shadow in there. So I'm gonna create a little bit, I'm gonna exaggerate here so you can see what I'm doing, but I'm gonna do this, look. I'm gonna create a little bit of that shape in there, but I'm gonna do it in a very subtle way. So I'm gonna go like 3 and just add that little sharpness just to exaggerate that little shadow. And then I can build up a little bit more around the top just to help that little kind of shape that he has in there. I'm gonna dig a little deeper here around the corner of the nose. Just get a little bit more of that indentation. I have that little line in here already, pretty revealed. Later, I'm gonna smooth it out, but I'm marking it because I want to keep that position. For the nose itself, seems like at this point I have to add more volume around here. So I'm gonna fill up this area a little bit more. Very, very subtle, just incorporate more form. And then I'm gonna reduce this little area here a little bit. So I'm gonna just try to make them a little closer in terms of how much they're popping out. So everything becomes like more and more subtle, right? Like as you refine likeness and things like that, you're gonna start like, first you're gonna move like very broad forms, and then you're gonna start getting smaller and smaller. And then obviously I still have to do a lot about the likeness for this guy if I wanna nail the likeness. But I still have in the back of my mind that since this is a very crappy one single reference and just one angle, I might actually have to abandon it. Not completely because I really like the character, but at least like give room for other references I can incorporate, you know, and then come up with a character that looks cool at the end. That's the main goal. So I'm just like cutting around here. And now let's incorporate some wrinkles to match a little bit more of the direction of his own wrinkles. So here, I'm gonna go to the highest res. You can see everything. Let's go back right here. Oh, where is this? Oh, this guy, okay. So let me just go back to my pore first, because I need to cover some more area here. I need this area here covered with pores, so make sure that I have everything symmetric. Yes. So let's do some more in here. Do more intensity, like 42. Just make sure I have those little gaps covered because I need the blending to happen in here. But to help with the blending, like I said, you can actually soften things right before you get to that area. But because those ones I already left them fairly far from this area around here, I can actually start growing some of them and painting with a little bit less intensity. So let's say let me just cover this area here too. Seems like I went a little bit small in there, but I'm gonna end up like eliminating a lot of them in this area as I start blending things. I can do with the smooth stronger around here, just completely, mostly eliminate them. But around this area here, closer to the wrinkles, instead of like going crazy with the intensity, I can just go like with the half of that. So I have 41 I'm using here. I'm gonna go like 20. And I start sculpting pores in here, but like much more subtle than before to help with the blending area. And I'm gonna start extending them closer to those wrinkles so I can actually blend them very nicely in there. I'm gonna go even a little higher. So let's see, 24. Yeah, so we can see a little bit more of them right here.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
One thing that I thought was interesting in regards to your reference and my reference and just African-American skin in general is I didn't quite put two and two together before as to you don't see a lot of African-American people with like acne, for example,
yeah.
the way you know, white people do. And we were talking about it a lot when we were looking at this reference in terms of we don't really see visible pores that much. And so I was looking much closer to my reference right now, and I really don't see honestly any visible pores like you're saying with older people. Yeah. It's a lot of external bumps, not really many deep pores. And I think that's representative a lot of, you know, when you see people who don't have acne, like all of your reference here, none of them have really acne like a lot of other people do.
Yeah. This guy here
has more pores.
Yeah, he has pores in there. I was looking at those guys before, and I think like all of them I noticed like very visible pores. It's just let's see, like this guy here too. This guy has a little bit more acne and some pimples and stuff, but you still see the underneath, especially right here, right in the glancing angle. There's a lot of bumps, especially with like around the it's like the beard and things like that. But all of them have like some very interesting pores. I'm gonna be creating something that resembles more that kind of skin. But I need my base skin to be in place first, and then I can start working on more variation, a little bit more depth,
Right,
but,
right.
Yeah, but definitely, man. Like, it all depends on your reference, I suppose, But the guys I found, like, all of them have at least like this area here, they're fairly visible. And then obviously when you get to the nose and things like that, then I'm gonna have to blend things. Let's blend this now, actually, before I forget. I'm not gonna forget, but just completely almost eliminate them from here. And then what we can use here is that little brush, like the random brush, to just like help with the blending. Actually, with the smooth, let's use the smooth stronger. In this area here is good. So just like completely eliminate them right there. And then they start showing up again when it gets closer to the bridge of the nose. And then, so I'm gonna go back to my skin random, and I'm gonna continue to do that little random circles here. So let's just go lower intensity, maybe 6. And do some of that. Yes,
Chris. So related to what you just mentioned, it is true that in some of the pictures of the character that I'm working on, those pores are a little bit more visible. On others are kind of like covered. So I guess your technique is first lay down all these pores, as you said, kind of a base, right? And then if you have to cover those or close them or add the wrinkles on top, so they kind of then melt with the SSS, and then is when we cannot see the match. Or because same thing happened to me in one of the pictures that I posted of this guy, the one that is actually posing. So you can see less of those pores. So yeah, I wonder if like there is a way to cover them, or you always leave them as visible as you have them right now.
I normally start with smoothing them out to try to like disguise them a little bit. But then, like you said, I mean, like I start like covering with different types of patterns and changing directions, like I did with those guys in here. In the case of there's the July class was Ray Harryhausen I was sculpting, and I started with the same type of pores, like to be able to teach people, right? But then at some point I was like, man, he doesn't have a lot of them. So I ended up actually having to smooth quite a bit of them, and then resculpting micro wrinkles on top to actually create a different type of skin, But I like to do like, first I have to be able to teach my students to do whatever type of skin they want to do. So that's why I have to go all the way here. But at the same time, if you guys want to go straight to what you're seeing in your references, I would say go for it, because there's no harm in that. It's like if you see like, okay, there's no need for me to sculpt all those pores if I'm not seeing them, then just make sure that you're covering the face with the pores like entirely, so symmetrically, so you don't need to do twice. But if you want to do more subtle straight away without going through this process, I think I'm gonna leave it up to you guys.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I think you can totally do that. And your model is looking really cool, man. I was looking at it. I have to comment on the so it's a lot of pending stuff in there that I have to comment on, but looking very cool. I'm gonna add some comments in there soon.
Thank you so much. I actually wanted you to take a look to the likeness mostly. The detail, I think we can cover it with the screenshots, as you said.
Yeah.
But I think, I want to take advantage of your eye there.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, like sometimes I'm wrong. It's a 50-50 chance I'm wrong. But no, actually, yeah, it's like if you guys trust me to put like any model in there, it's like it can be like a ZBrush model, whatever. Sometimes you get stuck, right? We are kind of like working on the same model for a long time, and things are just not quite there, and you don't know why. So basically, like I'm gonna be, it's like you borrow my eyes for a little bit, so I can try to help you guys. But I trust that you guys gonna be the ones actually fixing all this stuff. You have the power. I'm just here to help.
Nice. Thank you.
No problem. That's the thing, right? Like there's no way for me to teach you guys anything that you don't want to learn. So it's like I'm basically exposing you guys to different types of ways of doing stuff. It's like stuff that I learned over the years, and very differently from what a lot of people do stuff. I think like I have my own way of doing it, and that's the way I'm comfortable with. But I have to be be able to adapt as well, because at a work environment, I mean, like you have to be able to work in a team, and if the team is not using any of those techniques, right, and you're not able to provide something that can be used as a team, that's like worthless. But I would say, like, if you follow the stuff I do, you should be able to get like very, very nice results, I think, based on what I see from students from past classes who actually, the ones who stuck with stuff I was teaching the most, but I always leave up to the people, because there are so many people with different levels in those classes, that if you already have your own techniques and stuff, I would say like just use whatever is usable. But then by all means, I mean, like if you guys have different ways or simpler ways of doing stuff, better ways, just like by all means, like mix and match like anything that's helpful in this class. And as long as I can help you guys like to improve on any area, I'm gonna be happy to do that. But definitely I'm gonna be doing my own thing here, and by no means I'm gonna be forcing you guys to believe that's the right way to do anything. It's just like it's just one way, especially when it comes to ZBrush and even Maya. It's like there are like 3,000 ways of doing the same thing. It's like there's no way you can just say like, yeah, you just do this way. But what I'm saying is that yeah, if you follow what I'm doing here, it might not be like the best or the simplest way, but I can guarantee like results. It's like you guys can see like the work of some students. There is one particular student that I'm the proudest, is Roger. You saw his work. He's working on another portrait right now. It's impressive what he did during this class. What he did, he posted the other day like his work from the beginning of this year, and then the stuff that he did after the class. And basically he got obsessed. It's like he bought the class offline before he got the online content. And then he was doing all this stuff, like, because he was unemployed, he was doing all this stuff on his own, man. And then he came up, like, as soon as he started the class, his model was already looking really good. I was like, holy shit. And then when he posted the work that he was doing at the beginning of this year, he almost like brought tears to my eyes, man, because like he really took to the heart, it's like, and he really improved a lot, man. And that's like what drives me, I think, doing those classes, is seeing people actually improving and experimenting with stuff, and especially having fun with the process, because as soon as you stop having fun and everything becomes a burden, then you're kind of screwed, then you're going to be resorting like, man, I'm not going to go this route at all because this is a torture. But as soon as you embrace it, it's like, man, let's try that for a second. Let's just like listen to some music, like he said, and forget about doing work. Let's just have fun here. And to me, it was like I'm doing this like for almost 2 decades now, like working with this stuff, and not specifically portraits, but the CG, right? And dude, I still have energy, it's like to sculpt all this crap, because it's just like, it's pleasure to me. It's therapy. It's it's like, you're not working for someone, you're working for yourself. It's just like, yeah, try not to think about any of this as being like tasks. It's like just think about like, okay, I'm gonna just have fun with it, and understand that the frustration is gonna be present. They're always present for me. Like everything I do, man, I'm always frustrated with things not going to my way, and hating my models like next morning every time, but it's all part of the process, you know. It's like, and at the end of the day, the process is more important than the final result for the most part. That's how I felt when I did those CG challenges back in the day. It was like every other CG challenger was participating, seems like. And I would get like, you know, I was like really happy with the process itself. And then when it was time to post the final result, it didn't look as good as the process, you know, like the work in progress stuff always looked better. But you know, that's what I took from it. So let's go back to my reference, man, because I'm again like just tripping and talking a lot. I think that's what happens when English is not your native language, you know. It's like you start like yapping a lot because you want to make sure that all the ideas you're trying to communicate are as clear as possible, and then you end up like over talking. You know, I think that's why I talk a lot in those classes, because, you know, still have a, you know, I'm here for like 15 years, 16 years, 15 years, but definitely still have trouble with certain parts of the vocabulary. Okay. Actually, if I start looking at the reference, I'm going to start noticing stuff like in the scars, for example. I'm going to just like build them to look a little bit more like scars here. It's almost like a combination of scar and bump. And then I'm going to remove the, oh, too much. Yeah, I forgot I have the smooth strong now. And I have to do like a very low intensity of it. Just going to remove the top stuff detail because of the scar tissue, right? You should not have all those pores in there. Just going to smooth them out. And I'm going to dig this one again deeper. Try to build like a, looks like an organic little thing. And smooth the top again. Yeah, stuff like that I can start doing. Now for his own face, what I noticed here, he has those little bridges right around here. So I'm gonna be building some of them with the low intensity. And you're gonna see this right around here. So I'm gonna build some of them to create this impression of a very thin skin right there. And then since I'm building those guys here, I can reinforce them by adding some very thin wrinkles as well around them, just like to support them. So let's do actually higher intensity in smaller size. Yeah, something like that. That's the cool part about like having a software like ZBrush, right? Like it's, and with HD geometry, I mean, like there's so much you can add to the model. I remember like back the day the poly limit was 2 million polygons. And nowadays, man, you can add so much. It's like, it's almost like, apparently like the limit for HD geometry is 1 billion polygons, but I never pushed further than 250, 280, something like that. I don't even dare. They want to see like a vortex opening and, you know, swallowing me, sending me to the underworld. It'd be crazy. Let's get some of those guys around here as well. So build those ones again. I'm trying to create some kind of crisscrossing. So it's not like a parallel lines ever. You can't see the parallel lines underneath, obviously, but you know, it's like you have to be able to see. Oh, sorry. You know, it's like those different directions happening as well. As for the sides of the eye in here, I noticed that he has this this kind of like it's a secondary wrinkle in here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just go to a lower res in here, and I'm gonna build up this little fold a little bit more. Like this guy here has to come almost like stretched right there. Creates a stretch, and then there is a secondary one from underneath. So I'm gonna be pulling this guy here, I'm gonna have to make this area a little deeper. Then get the move brush, use Alt to make sure I'm moving like in the direction of the normal. Just dig in a little bit. And I'm gonna move the stop down slightly. Like that. I hope I don't make it too mushy. So later on, I can actually go to a lower resolution and just, you know, do a little smoothing there. Just make sure it's not too mushy. But I want to bring this down slightly like that. And then this guy has to almost like look like it's coming from underneath, and then popping out around here, and with an angle also to follow the gravity line. So let's do it again with a little bit sharper now. Almost like it's almost like a counter arching here. So basically like this one is gonna go, if I do it very strongly here. So this one is gonna go this way. So like this type of arch, and this one's gonna go that way. So I'm gonna do that with a very subtle brushing here. So start with this one, arching down. And then here I can actually add some more, make the brush a little smaller just to create the impression it's a very thin skin, and then break this line down into more. So like maybe 2 here, and then extend it slightly up. Those lines here, although he doesn't have a lot visible in there because it's a very low resolution, but those lines, they start connecting towards the middle here. So I can start doing some of that, pulling them from here all the way, and smooth it out a little bit, and then create some of them doing this, and then create a bigger breakup right here. Everything has to be very subtle and treated almost like as an entirely different project, right? It's almost like you're sculpting multiple creatures within one single face. It's just like, it's like I said, it's a matter of like how far you want to push and how much fun you want to have by sculpting a portrait that at first looks like something that's completely boring, right? Like, why sculpt a portrait? But to me, there's so much to learn. Each one of those, you know, so much to learn with the structure of the skin, how things stretch. There's a lot, and no matter how many years you're going to spend doing this, you're never going to learn everything. There is I think that's the conclusion of any people who lived in the past, like all those old masters, right? Like Michelangelo, all those guys. They like, I'm pretty sure in their heads, they're like, man, so much to learn. I'm 85 and holy shit, I don't know anything yet. Michelangelo is an interesting guy, isn't it? Like, because he's apparently he had like very bad arthritis, and then that kind of stopped him from working later in life, and then he kind of like migrated more towards architecture, you know, and started creating more architectural pieces and stuff, but never stopped creating, right? Just adapted. But a very interesting guy for sure. Yeah, let's bring this area down a little bit. The more I look at the reference, they're obviously going to see more and more stuff. So just going to pull this out slightly. The eye bagging here. Yeah. So yeah, we're at the 11:03. So I think in terms of detail, what I covered today was like some of those variations we start adding. Maybe like tomorrow, going to do more of the, you know, the nose stuff, and pores, you know, more variation like bumps and stuff. I'm going to try to cover tonight like all those areas missing pores, so I can have like, you know, it's like no gaps in between them. And then we're going to keep like working on the transitions between stuff. Maybe like move to the neck, do some work on the neck in there to show types of brushes I use normally, and especially the lips. The lips are normally one of my favorite parts, combined with eye bags. You know, it's like lips, they normally sell the character, you know. If you have like convincing eye bags and convincing eyes to go with them, combined with nice lips, you know, it's like well sculpted. I think this sells a lot of the character, you know, together with the variations and everything else, obviously, but very important little parts in there. So, I hope you guys are, it's like being able to follow everything. I think like things are fairly clear. It's just a matter of like putting the time to incorporate all those things. It's like if you have any questions, obviously like rewatch the video. If you cannot catch anything that you have, it's like you have some question that really is not in the video, feel free to, it's like post in the Facebook group. And you see, like I try to reply every day, but I don't reply at every hour, right? Like it takes me hours to actually go back to it, and I just don't want to do like it's like be there constantly because I have a lot of stuff going on. But at the end of the night, for example, I'm gonna be posting this video, and it takes like 2 hours to process and be able to upload everything for you guys. So meanwhile, I'm gonna be replying to some of the questions in there, and then going back to my model and try to finish some of those pores, and then go to bed around 2 a.m. again. But it's all fun, man. So thanks a lot, guys, and stay tuned for tomorrow. I'm gonna be sending out the invitation for the meeting this weekend, and then start like thinking about what you want to show. Preparing your files, whatever you want to do. So thanks a lot, and I see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too, man. All righty.